wird. Dann versucht sich das Hirn so zu ordnen, dass es auf ganz einfache Notfallprogramme zurückgreift. Kreative Lösungen kriegt man nur unter entspannten Bedingungen, wo Sie spielerisch herumprobieren können, was Ihnen da so alles einfällt, wo sich Dinge miteinander verknüpfen können, fast wie im Traum. Und wenn dann die Panik zu ernst wird, das ist doch dann versucht sich das Hirn so zu ordnen, dass es auf ganz einfache Notfallprogramme zurückgreift. Kreative Lösungen kriegt man nur unter entspannten Bedingungen, wo Sie spielerisch herumprobieren können, was Ihnen da so alles einfällt, wo sich Dinge miteinander verknüpfen können, fast wie im Traum. Und dann plötzlich merken Sie, wow, das ist doch die Idee, so geht's.
Über 200 Teilnehmer.
Ein ganz herzliches Willkommen. Bevor es losgeht mit dem Gespräch mit Jane Goodall und Charles Eisenstein, möchte ich gern Harald Hauser bitten, noch 2-3 Minuten mit dem Klavier für uns zu spielen, damit wir wirklich gut ankommen können mit Geist und Seele im Körper. Danke, Harald. Vielen herzlichen Dank, Harald Hauser. Danke, dass du uns mit deiner Musik beschenkst.
Dankeschön. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I'm so grateful to welcome Jane Goodall and Charles Eisenstein. It's a bit of a dream that we have an hour together with you in a dialogue about loving the world, about what to do in these crazy times, about surrendering to what we cannot change, and seeing what we can change, and how we face crisis or collapse and still keep and nourish hope within us. Yeah. It's my colleague Hemma who is with me.
Hi, good evening and a good day wherever you are.
Jene, die hier sind und gern deutsche Übersetzung wollen, es sollte bei Zoom unten jetzt bei euch im Programm eine Weltkugel unten, ein Button sein, wo ihr draufklicken könnt, Dolmetschen und Deutsch. Dann gibt es eine wunderbare Dolmetschung von Michaela Leitner von Smile Translation.
Ja, bevor wir inhaltlich starten, noch ein ganz großes Danke an die Doris Schreivogel vom Jane Goodall Institut in Österreich, ja, die diese großartige Idee auch eingebracht hat, uns alle hier zusammenzubringen bei einem Live-Event. Und wir haben das sehr, sehr gerne aufgegriffen und wir sind sehr dankbar, dass das heute Abend möglich geworden ist. Danke, liebe Doris.
Und wenn jemand hier ist, der sehr gut Englisch spricht, oder gut genug Englisch spricht, um das zu verstehen, bitte auf den YouTube-Stream wechseln, dass hier möglichst Menschen sind im Zoom, die Übersetzung genießen können, weil Übersetzung geht nur auf Zoom und nicht auf YouTube. Gut, also danke für die Achtsamkeit. Okay, now we start. Actually, I prepared a long introduction to introduce you both. And now I see, well, there's so much which can be read, and the time is so precious. I don't want to speak too long, and I want to skip the introduction, and I just assume everybody knows you. And I want to start with you, Jane, asking, how are you in these so special times? You just said a little bit before you are working more than ever. I just want to know how you experience this time of change. It is change, and how do you keep sane and positive? Yes.
Since March, I've been here. This is in the UK, and I'm in the house where I grew up from the age of 5 when World War II began. Came here with my mother and sister, and so this is the family home. And behind me are books I read as a child. Out of the window are trees I climbed as a child, and round the corner over there is the hotel where I worked to earn my fare to Africa. Well, before the pandemic, I was traveling about 300 days a year all around the world. And I thought I was busy. I'm twice as busy now. I mean, already this morning, I've been to Tanzania and China giving talks. And now here I am in Austria. And tomorrow morning, I'm going to be in Paris. And it's every single day, Zooms and Skypes and podcasts and webinars. Then there's video messages to people who are needing, I don't know, some kind of hope or stimulation or something, just to know that we care about them. And in between, of course, there's writing, and everybody seems to want blurbs for their books or introductions or something like that. And op-ed pieces and email and email and email. And it just doesn't stop. And weekends, what are weekends? I don't have any. So it's not good for my eyes with the lights, and it's not good for my voice with all the talking. But this is what I do, and how do I keep sane? Who says I'm sane? I think I'm completely round the bend by now, but, but I just have to keep going. So if I sound round the bend, you have to forgive me, that's all.
Thank you, Jane. I'm so grateful that you're taking the time.
Yeah, Charles, you are living in the United States, also in a very special time, not only because of COVID, but because of change in your administration. And how do you experience your situation with all that change at the moment?
Yeah, I've in some way my life has changed in a similar way to Jane. You know, I used to travel. I was a public speaker, and now I'm a Zoom speaker. And it's, as far as like keeping sane or keeping positive or keeping hopeful, I can't say that I always do. In the last year, I've definitely gone through periods of pretty profound despair and have been brought back into sanity by, you know, others out there who can hold sanity when I can't. And then maybe I'm able to hold it when they can't, and we can stay sane together. But I think what you said, Martin, at the beginning about these crazy times, in a way, like we've always lived in crazy times. Anyone who's aware of what's happening on Earth can't tolerate it as normal. But now the craziness is just maybe a little bit more obvious. And yeah, I'll stop with that. And I'm very happy to be here, by the way, and to be in Austria, where I've been and have many dear friends.
Well, I think, Charles, to what you said, I think, you know, that it feels very crazy because it literally has affected the entire world. And it has completely changed certain things. I mean, there's been so much suffering, so much death of loved ones, so much loss of jobs, so much economic chaos. And it has plunged us into a very different situation. So all the other things you're referring to, they're sort of gradual, and people don't feel, most people don't feel that they're directly affected. We are, of course, but they don't feel it. But now everybody is feeling affected and puzzled and sometimes, as you say, depressed. So that's the change. That's why it's different from the other kind of change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I won't add to that. That's well said.
And with your description, Charles, you said that you were always helped by other people. So this, you refer to community and connection. And this is a core topic of your work, is interbeing. So maybe you could explain a little bit what you mean by that and how you experience that in your daily life.
Yeah, you know, those of us who have been advancing what I call a new story or a new and ancient story on Earth, it's sometimes a lonely task because the surrounding culture holds a different story. And, you know, we humans, we're social animals. So it's really hard to hold a divergent story on your own. We need other people to hold it with us, because ultimately we're not separate selves. We're social selves and we're ecological selves. And really the origin of the craziness is the forgetting or the denial of that truth, which in the short run seems like, you know, if you buy into the separate self whose well-being comes from insulating from the other who are hostile or potential competitors or dominating the other, then your progress and humanity's progress comes through increasing that domination, becoming more powerful. And the more powerful you become, the better off you'll be. But we're learning, I think, well, we're seeing that play out actually in the public health response to COVID, where it's all about insulating, locking down, shutting out, staying separate. and we're discovering what that looks like taken to an extreme, which is not only insanity and unhappiness and mental health issues and economic breakdown, but ultimately, and I don't like to make a negative prediction, but I think ultimately even our physical health will suffer from our cutoff from the social and microbial and ecological world. So yeah, and that's insane because the reality, the truth is that we are interbeings.
And I might wonder that you, Jane, have experienced another very deep connection to other species and to not only to human beings but to humankind beings. So
Yes.
you can describe a little bit about your experience, the connection to life and to other species.
Well, I was born loving animals. I was born loving being by myself out in nature. That tree I pointed to out of the window, my favorite of all the trees, beech. I used to climb up there. I felt closer to the birds. And when I was in Gombe National Park in Tanzania with the chimpanzees, I spent almost a year, every single day. I was completely on my own out in the forest. And I felt this connection with a spiritual force that I feel very strongly when I'm out in nature. There was also a connection with the chimpanzees and other animals. And I've always had this kind of connection. I had that connection with my dog, Rusty. Here he is always behind me, who taught me so much about animals and our relationship with them. And so gradually over the years, I've learned to be, I was very shy as a child. I didn't really want to be with many people. I wanted to be alone. Now I've learned to be extremely social. I've had to be, and I don't dislike it. This is the biggest thing I miss because of COVID is being able to be with, I've got friends now all around the world from all this traveling. I miss my friends in Austria and they tell me they miss me, which is a kind of nice duality. But I've got friends in China and Taiwan and Hong Kong and Singapore, different African countries, all over Europe, all over the United States and Canada and Latin America and Malaysia and increasingly in the Middle East. That's what I miss. I miss the actual face-to-face contact with people. The silver lining is that I've been able to reach with a message of what I hope is a good message of how we have to stay hopeful. I've been able to reach literally millions more people, I'm told, and in many, many more countries. So that's the silver lining, and that's what's exhausting. But on the other hand, I guess it's worth it. I hope so.
Jane, I would like to know, for me, it's important that this story that we feel so separated from nature and from wildlife, and it's so far away for us here in our civilization. Can you describe a moment where you felt deeply part of nature and also being with the chimpanzees in such an intense way? What did you learn?
Well, first of all, I have to disagree that you're disconnected from nature in Austria and Europe. It's all around. And, it's everywhere. You can actually find nature and lose yourself and become alone with nature in a park. You just need when I go to a hotel, I'm only happy if out of the window I can see a tree, and then I can just sit there and imagine I'm in the forest. But I know what you mean. You mean about the very intense experiences that I had in Gombe out in the forest. And there've just been moments, and they're not so many, and I don't know what brings them on. But when you're on your own in the forest, you can forget yourself. You're not there. If you're with somebody, then you're very conscious of your humanity. But if you're on your own, you forget you. And sometimes when I'm in that mode of self-forgetting, I've just felt so at one with nature. And there've been just one or two times when I seem to hear the sounds differently and to smell the smells and to just feel so much a part of the natural world. They're very magical moments. And afterwards, you just sit there and try and remember them and try and keep them so that always they'll be there when you need them. So that's what I try to do as I travel around, is to keep these magic moments of being in nature inside, so I can always call on them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I would like to ask, how is this for you, Charles? Do you want to add to that? How is this for you, Charles?
Honestly,
Sorry,
I'm just
short question, please. Michaela, kannst du ganz kurz auf Recording klicken? Danke. Break over.
Okay.
Okay.
How is this for you, Charles?
honestly, I'm almost hypnotized by Jane's voice, and it's like when she was speaking, I got a glimpse of that. I got like a little bit of that experience. I was touched by that experience, and it brought to mind childhood experiences where, you know, I wasn't so invested in myself, and there were places that I roamed as a child that were like intimate companions, you know, like they were kind of an extension of me, because who I was became in relation to those landmarks and to those places. And you know, I spoke of when I was actually last in Austria, I spoke of one of those places that was near where I lived and that was then destroyed to build houses. And I spoke of the loss, like part of reality had vanished. And a woman in the audience said, "Oh, Charles, stop feeling sorry for yourself. Everybody's experienced something like that." And later I thought, yeah, everybody has experienced something like that. And it's become so normalized that maybe we become afraid even to accept those ties, to accept that intimacy, because it's going to be destroyed again. And that this is a wound of disconnection that many, many people in modern society carry. And with it, a longing for the kind of experience that Jane just described. And yeah, for me, it arouses a kind of, I don't know, as Paul Hawken would put it, blessed unrest, like a kind of a dissatisfaction with Zoom and you know, virtual events, because the relationship is quite narrow. You know, we can hear each other, we can see each other, and I see lots of other faces here if I go to gallery view, but there's not going to be a random encounter with any of you after the event. Or also, it's the same as kind of the modern conception of what it's like to experience nature. It's mostly nature as something to look at or to enjoy. But again, it's not a multidimensional relationship where you're getting your hands dirty, where you're getting hot, where you're doing things to the land and seeing the results, and seeing the results reverberate out through an ecosystem and becoming part of it. Like, I think that's the longing. It's to belong. You know, it's to have multidimensional, intimate relationships with everything around us. And this is not like, I'm not saying this, oh, you know, we're lost. It's just to put a name on what is lost, so that our longing has an object Because if without an object, then that longing to reconnect can get turned on to food, drugs, pornography, addictions, like something that gives you that Zoom calls, something that gives you maybe a partial experience of what we're really seeking. And so I just wanted to hold and elevate as sacred the experience that Jane is talking about. Because I think that for me at least, when I hold something precious, then I become oriented to that thing in whatever form it might take.
Well, I think this is exactly why, we have this program, which some people listening will know about, but not everyone. It's called Roots and Shoots. It's a program for young people. It began in Tanzania in 1991 with 12 high school students. It's now in 68 countries and growing all the time. It has members in preschool, lots in kindergarten, university, everything in between, even spilling out into the adult world, but it's mainly for youth. And they all choose 3 projects to make the world a better place. One to help people, one to help animals, one to help the environment. And its main message is each one of us makes some impact on the planet every single day. And as long as we're not living in poverty, we have a choice as to what kind of impact. Even people living in poverty can have some kind of choice. But I merely explained that program to say that one important part of it is getting children as young as possible out into nature, having that hands-on experience, messing about in the earth, digging holes to plant trees, growing organic food. And little children in the kindergarten, I can't tell you how many times I've been to a school where they have vermiculture. That's where you put your food remains and you put these little worms and they turn it into compost. And the number of times I've had these little kids open the lid of their compost bin and I have to put my hands out and they fill it up with old bits of food waste and little wriggling pink worms. It's actually quite funny, but the kids love it. And if you don't get that closeness with nature, we take them into nature, parks, or sometimes we can take them actually into a forest or a wood or a field or something, but somewhere out into nature. Because if you don't get to know something, you can't really love it. And if you don't love it, then you don't care about saving it. So all this experience where we go to see something that was beautiful and find that humans have destroyed it and built another shopping mall or another car park or something like that, we need to be hurt by that. We do not need to become hardened to it. If we want to save the world for future generations, we must feel that pain. We must feel the hurt of Mother Nature in our hearts. And that gives us the strength and the courage to go on fighting, even though sometimes it seems impossible with the great, big, powerful corporations and governments, which are run by people like President Trump, for example, destroying the environment left, right, and center. We've got to fight that. And if we don't love what we're fighting for, we won't be able to carry on against the odds.
Yeah, can I just add a little bit to that?
Yes, of course.
It's one of the, I wrote a book on climate change. And one of the things I said was that I asked the question, how do we become environmentalists? Like, how did I become an environmentalist? And I think for a lot of people, the answer is through beauty and grief, through loving something and then maybe losing it. And not from a rational calculation that if we don't limit carbon emissions, then X, Y, and Z bad effects are going to happen. But it's something much more personal. And that therefore, if we're going to serve the cause of environmentalism and ecological health, we can't only appeal to cost-benefit arguments, but we have to also call to that part of others, even people in government or in corporations, that has also experienced beauty and loss. And if they haven't, then maybe to connect people with that and to give them experiences like the Roots and Shoots does, because then you don't need those debates. You know, you're not going to need to be persuaded that these are precious, and not only precious for their instrumental utility to humans, but precious because they are sacred, because you don't even need a reason. Like, I don't need a reason to protect my child. I don't need someone to say, well, Charles, if you do that, then he'll grow up and he'll take care of you when you're old, so you better take good care of him now. Like, that would be absurd. And when we have the intimacy, like, to know it, to love it, you have to know it. You know, when we get to know other beings, the rest of creation, then it's the same. And I think that it's that level of commitment that comes from love that is necessary right now, given the power of the forces that are now exploiting the planet.
It needs a new mindset, doesn't it? I mean, how crazy is it to think that we can have unlimited economic development around the world on a planet with finite natural resources, which are already being used up in some places faster than nature can replenish them, a growing human population, a growing population of livestock. Right now, it's estimated there are 7.8 billion of us, roughly, on the planet. In 2050, it's estimated there'll be closer to 10 billion. So if we carry on...
How many were there when you were born?
I don't know.
But it was maybe something like 2 billion.
Something like that, yeah, 87 years ago. Somebody out there, look it up and we can discuss it later. Anyway, you know, what's going to happen? We cannot carry on with business as usual. And I think a bright side of this COVID-19, more and more people are beginning to realize that we need a new relationship with the natural world, because it's our disrespect of nature and our disrespect of animals that actually led to COVID-19, that leads to these zoonotic diseases, and that we have to have a greener and more sustainable kind of economy and a way of thinking which doesn't equate success with just getting more money and getting more power, but equates success with building up the kind of life where you can be happy, where you can feed yourself and your family, yes. And yes, people need some money to live. It just goes wrong when we live for money, when we live for power and wealth. That's somehow got to change. And that's not going to be easy, and some people won't change. That's the trouble. But again, I come back to Roots and Shoots, because children are absolutely wonderful at changing their parents and their grandparents. I meet so many parents who say, well, of course I recycle, my kids make me. Oh, of course I don't buy food with palm oil in it or genetically modified food in it, because my kids won't speak to me if I do. They really do change their parents very often. So that's the way we have to live and go through these difficult times, grabbing onto the little bits of hope, the little strands of silver that lead to success, even tiny little strands, because millions of tiny little strands will eventually move us to a better world.
Maybe you could explain a little bit more how you see the connection between COVID and our natural situation and a climate crisis. How do you see this connection?
Well, first of all, as we destroy environments, we force some animal species into closer contact with each other, and that can provide an opportunity for a pathogen like a virus or a bacteria to spill over from one animal to another animal. And if it if it bonds with one animal species to another species, if it bonds with a cell in that individual's body, it can lead to a new disease. So animals anyway, many of them, they have their own viruses that they've lived with for hundreds of years. They don't affect them, they're just there. But when they jump over into a human, so we've got not only the diseases that animals have carried for hundreds of years, but the new ones that we're creating by forcing species together. And many animal species are being pushed into closer contact with people, going into cities searching for food as their own food supply diminishes, as we destroy it. Hunters going deeper and deeper into the forest, killing them, hunting them, eating them. And then we have this trafficking. We catch animals and send them alive or their body parts around the world. We sell them in wildlife markets in Asia, in Africa, in many parts of the world. We sell them for food. We sell them their skins, clothing or leather or something. We sell them for medicine, and we sell them for pets. But this illegal trafficking of wild animals is estimated to be worth about $20 billion a year. And so you get these cartels, and when people fight it, they very often lose their lives. It's like fighting poaching. So then this COVID-19 is thought to have originated from an animal, nobody quite knows what species, but in one of the wildlife markets in China, just as SARS did, whatever it was, 10 years, 12 years ago. And unfortunately for us, the virus that jumped on to this woman and created this new COVID-19 disease happened to be very contagious. And so as our global travel spread it more and more fast around the world, and as people refused to obey the simple instructions of wearing masks and social distancing and so on, it's caused this economic chaos. But we're lucky in a way. If you think of another zoonotic, they're called zoonotic diseases, these ones that jump from an animal to a person. If it had been like Ebola, which was another of them, which started from probably sick gorilla, that was highly, I mean, the percentage of sick people in the COVID-19 pandemic who die is relatively small. With Ebola, it's not as contagious, but the percentage of people who die is much greater. So we can have another pandemic if we don't change our ways, which has the contagion of COVID-19 and the death rate of Ebola.
How do you see this connection between this crisis we experience now with COVID and our climate crisis? Charles?
Yeah, I also see a deep connection here in a different way than Jane does, but maybe coming from the same root. So I have obsessed quite a bit over all aspects of COVID. And over time, I have become convinced that it was not a zoonotic disease, but that it was the result of bioweapons research, something that escaped from a lab. And I'm not going to go through all the reasons why I think that, but just to say, what is the mindset that engineers viruses, this gain of function research, that they try to make them more contagious and more deadly? Like, what is the mindset that would do that? It's a mindset of domination, of victory over the enemy, and also of the treating of nature as an object. I mean, the ultimate object is a weapon, So that mindset is the same mindset that is oblivious to the living nature, the livingness of this planet, that also treats it as a source of, quote, resources, a garbage dump, a source of pets in the wildlife trade or animal parts. Like, it's the same mindset of objectification, domination, and control. Mm-hmm. So yeah, like Jane was saying, is as long as this mindset continues of othering nature, we're going to experience nature as an adversary, as a source of danger, as a competitor, as an other. And I would argue also that until we understand the totality of the planet as a living being, that our efforts to reverse climate change are going to fail, even if we, from this geomechanical mindset, cut carbon emissions to zero. If we do that, but we still continue to destroy places, to eradicate species, to dump insecticides and herbicides across the face of the planet, sometimes in the name of combating whatever, Zika, combating something, combating invasive species, combating. If we continue this war mentality, then we are going to experience ourselves repeatedly as victims. And climate change will continue if as long as we continue this mindset and this kind of relationship to the earth.
Well, the way I see it is basically what you're saying, but it's this exact same disrespect of nature and animals that's led to climate change. All the things you say, the destruction of the soil with all the chemicals, the loss of insects and birds because of the chemicals, the loss of species because we destroy the forest. And so this disrespect has also led to biodiversity loss. And the ridiculous thing is that we are part of the ecosystem. We're not separated from it. We depend on it. We depend on it for clean air and water. We depend on it for our clothes. We depend on it for everything. And we continue to destroy it to the future peril of our great-grandchildren. And that's why we have to have this new mindset, as you say. We've got to stop thinking of ourselves as separate and realize we are part of. It is one whole. And there's a lot of talk in some countries about the terribly invasiveness of some species that have been introduced, like rats or something. But the most invasive species on the planet is us. Wherever we go, we destroy. The indigenous people used to live in harmony, and they didn't overpopulate because their lifestyle meant that women didn't have as many children. You see that everywhere. I mean, if you start feeding rats or guinea pigs or rabbits a lot of food, they have more babies more often. That's what's happened with us from the agricultural revolution onwards. Mm. So we've just got to get this change. And I just pray that this COVID-19 that really has affected everybody will wake up enough people and give enough people the courage, the strength to fight for this new mindset.
Hmm. Do you see this happening, Charles? My first reaction, or even with Vivian, our common friend, our first reaction was, well, yes, this could be a chance for a real deep change. And I'm not so sure anymore, but if this got leading to the change I would like to see. How do you see it, especially also from your perspective, what you are experiencing in the US?
I do think it is a chance, but not a guarantee. We're not going to be rescued from our choices by COVID-19 or by climate change or by anything else. What these crises do is they make plain to us what the choice is. So in the case of COVID-19, we're being shown the direction that we've been headed in stark contrast. It's become like the direction we've been headed in terms of more and more technologically dependent lives, social distancing. I mean, that we were already becoming more and more distant before COVID. More and more shopping, dating even, education, everything happening online. Less and less relation to community, more and more surveillance, et cetera, like all of these things were happening already. Climate change also is making a long history of ecological degradation more obvious to us and saying to us, what world do you choose? In a way, I'm more optimistic and more pessimistic than Jane is simultaneously, in that I don't think that the real question is, well, we have to change, otherwise our great-grandchildren won't have a world to live in. I think it's more a choice of what world are they going to live in? Like, what if through technology, through geoengineering, through bleaching the sky white with sulfur aerosols and seeding the ocean with iron oxide and installing giant carbon-sucking machines and growing all food hydroponically and with precision fermentation in big factories, what if we could survive without the rainforests, without the chimpanzees, without healthy oceans, without forests, without wetlands? What if we could survive on a concrete world through technology? What if we will not be saved by being forced to change just to survive? What if what we face is a choice of what world we're going to live in? If that's the case, then the only way that we're going to choose a living world rather than a concrete world is through love, is through holding life sacred, connecting with our innate biophilia, our innate love of life. Only love is going to be enough, because if we make it about what's in our best interest for us as separate beings, that's the mentality that's gotten us into the situation to begin with.
I do, however, think that we should be thinking of future generations when we make decisions. We've lost the wisdom of the indigenous people who made a decision based on how will this affect generations seven. They said 7 ahead. I'm saying we're not even thinking of 2 ahead with very many of our decisions that are made today. That's a very major problem, I think. And when I talk about the fact that, if we don't slow down climate change, if we don't stop the loss of biodiversity, if we don't have this new relationship, what's going to happen is that we will lose life on this planet as we know it and as we love it. So maybe we could live in a bubble of concrete. Dubai almost did that. But do we want to? I don't want to. I'd rather not be here to lose this beautiful nature. And there's still enough left. We just have to not only think of these technological advances, some of which will really help us live in greater harmony, but we've got to protect forests and clean up the ocean, the 2 great lungs of the world. There's a 1 trillion tree challenge now, planting 1 trillion trees. But although, yes, we need to try and repopulate the planet with trees, which we've destroyed, about 2/3 of the original forest have gone. We need to plant trees in urban areas because this is really helping the health of the people living there. But the rainforest is the most important with its biodiversity and its huge capacity for storing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere.
For me, when I listen to you both, it's like, it's not about repairing in a mechanistic worldview, but it's about resonating with all the living world with an open heart that loves what is. And out of that can grow the answers that we need now, what to do. It's not about repairing, it's about resonating with what is. and caring for it?
Probably
Yeah, I
both.
think
Probably both. And
Yes.
I always say it's only when head and heart work in harmony that we can attain our true human potential.
It's about insight and compassion.
I think that repair sometimes can be a useful concept.
Yeah, exactly.
But really, yeah, but it's more of just being in service to life and participating in the aliveness of the world.
And one thing that's really, really important that we have to do is to alleviate poverty. Because if you're living in absolute poverty somewhere like in Africa, you're going to cut down the last trees in your desperate effort to grow food for your family because your family is enlarging all the time. And you're going to cut down the trees to make charcoal to get some money. If you're in an urban area, you're going to buy the cheapest junk food. You can't afford to make those ethical choices. Did it harm the environment? Was it cruel to animals? Is it cheap because of child slave labor? You have to buy the cheapest. So that's what the Jane Goodall Institute has been doing in Africa since 1994, is to help the people. Well, let me say that when I first arrived in Gombe National Park, it's very small. It's the smallest in Tanzania. It was part of a great forest belt that stretched from East Africa to the West African coast. That was 1960, and it was the same in 1970, more or less. Towards the end of the 1980s, Gombe was a tiny island of forest surrounded by completely bare hills, more people living there than the land could support, too poor to buy food from elsewhere. And that's when it hit me. If we don't help these people find ways of living without destroying the environment, we can't save chimpanzees, forests, or anything else. So we began this holistic program, Take Care or Takari, which addressed things as diverse as growing more food without chemicals, without harmful chemicals, to providing better health and education facilities, to microcredit opportunities so that women could start their own small environmentally sustainable businesses, to providing scholarships to keep girls in school beyond puberty, because it's been shown that as women's education increases, family size tends to drop, and we've seen it happen, and providing family planning information, which the people want. The people want to be able to educate their children, and they want to be able to space them out and not have too many children. They can't afford to educate or even feed the 8 to 10 children that was normal when I first got to Gombe.
Well, thank you. Well, I think it's part of our world now that a lot of our conversation was actually facing the pain, and facing the crisis. And still, it's also, so how do we orient ourselves? What nourishes us to keep going? And you, Jane, for example, you started the Hopecast, a Hope podcast. So since both of you have a really wonderful quality of reaching the heart by stories, I would like to ask you if you could share a story, both what really encourages you or gives you hope.
Charles has to start because I've just been talking.
Well, we like listening to you. So don't stop talking, please. Yeah, to come up with the right story on the spur of the moment is challenging me right now.
Do you want me to jump in then? I'll tell a story. It's kind of symbolic of roots and shoots, and it's a story I absolutely love. And it was when we began the first Roots and Shoots group in the Democratic Republic of Congo, in the area where all the minerals are, where there's absolute armed conflict all the time with different groups coming in, taking over. It's a very dangerous place to be, actually. And this little group of roots and shoots, they were between 10 and 14, they found that a certain hill over there had been a sacred hill covered in forest, and now there wasn't any forest. Could they please reforest it? Well, actually, it was a much bigger hill than they thought, and they couldn't. But their mentor didn't want to, to dampen their enthusiasm. So he found a forester friend who donated some seedlings. Then he had to go and get permission from the rebel group that was there at the time. And the commanding said, well, it's a stupid idea, but I suppose there's no harm in it. But I'm going to have to send soldiers with you because I don't trust it. It's crazy. Well, so now imagine 15 little children clutching their little seedlings and I suppose something to dig with. They set off. It's much further than they thought. And they get there and it's very hot. And accompanying them are 4 big Congolese soldiers, marching along with AK-47s over their shoulders. And they get there and the children are a bit tired. But anyway, they industriously start digging holes to put in their little seedlings. One little girl, the youngest, she starts to cry. It's too hard. She can't do it. And after about 10 minutes, one of the soldiers leans his gun against a tree and goes to help her. And within the next 15 minutes, all the soldiers are busily helping the children plant their trees. And to me, this symbolizes everything that Roots and Shoots is about. It's about caring for nature, empowering children, and bringing people from different cultures, different mindsets together, because we are one human family. And that's much more important than the color of our skin, our culture, our religion, or our profession.
Thank you so much, Jane.
Thank you.
Wow. Yeah, when I hear that story, I'm like, maybe this isn't so hard. Like the more beautiful world that we want to see is it's just like a little shift away. It doesn't take much. And this is an irrational thought, but it just in this moment, it seems it wouldn't take much for us just to flip, to metaphorically speaking, put down the gun and take up the tree planting shovel. Like, it's not like the soldiers sacrificed anything by doing that. They probably felt great doing that. Like, it's not like we have to make big sacrifices of anything that we really need. The things that we need to sacrifice are the things that we don't actually need. And what we get in return for the sacrificing of bigger and more is fulfillment, connection, joy. Like, it's so close. And yes, at the same time, it's so far, but I think that a story like this, for me, it awakens the part of me that also knows that it is close, that also knows that it's possible. Mm-hmm. And this is the kind of story that, pulls me back from despair when I'm lost in it. So really, thank you so much for that story, Jane.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Charles.
What if it's easy, or what if it's close, or what if it's possible? So coming to the end of our conversation that was so rich, maybe you could share, what do you wish from the people or for the people, that about 1,000 people listening and watching this conversation? Is there any wish you have for or from them?
Well, my wish is that everybody remembers that they have a role to play in this life, and that every single day that we live, we do make some kind of impact, and we have a choice. And I think that is the most important message. And then JGI Austria will be really angry with me if I don't say, and please look up how you can become a member of JGI Austria, and please especially learn about roots and shoots and see if you can get any children you know involved. And I only say that because every day I get messages from people from all around the world saying, thank you for Roots and Shoots. It's changed me. It's given me hope. And so I gave 2 wishes there, but Doris would be very angry if I didn't say that.
We have just shared the link to Jane Goodall AT and Roots and Shoots in the chat. So please look it up there and share it wherever you can.
Thank you, Jane.
Thanks.
Charles?
It's something similar, just that to hold the consciousness that we all have, and that sometimes we get reminded of, that Earth is sacred, Earth is alive, and that I am here to serve that aliveness. And in holding that consciousness, then to ask, what is mine to do? And because I'm not going to say, what yours is to do, but I trust that in that awareness of what's sacred, that it will be clear. And that's what I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there anything else you still want to say before we finish, just to give the chance?
I've got so much to say that shut up.
Good.
Yeah, just thank you for bringing us together and for doing your beautiful work.
I must say, I'm so really touched. I know it's only in 2D and not in 3D, and I cannot touch you or hug you, and but still, for me, I'm so grateful for your surrendering to your calling, both of you. Like, for being an instrument of what you feel called for, and giving your life to it. I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we can blow kisses to each other.
Maybe we can just de-spotlight now, Steffi, and we all can blow kisses to each other. All these 500 people on Zoom and on YouTube. And
I'm blowing kisses to everybody out there.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good luck. Much help to you.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
And good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Or good evening, whatever. I don't know.
Fine.
Wenn die Panik zu ernst wird, dann versucht sich das Hirn so zu ordnen, dass es auf ganz einfache Notfallprogramme zurückgreift. Kreative Lösungen kriegt man nur unter entspannten Bedingungen, wo Sie spielerisch herumprobieren können, was Ihnen da so alles einfällt, wo sich Dinge miteinander verknüpfen können, fast wie im Traum. Und dann plötzlich merken Sie, wow, das ist doch die Idee, so geht's.